In today's video, we're going to be showing you how to make an emergency heater that does not use electricity or any source of gas. It is really basic, but really effective. So all we're using here is a metal pail. We're using a little strip of copper. All of this, by the way, can be found on Amazon, so I'll make sure and leave links to that. We're using a Crisco candle. You can use any type of candle, but we'll show you how we made this one. It's very easy, very cheap. And lastly, a bag of sand. Now the whole idea here is we're using sand specifically because sand scientifically has proven that it holds heat for much longer than if we were to just burn this candle out of a container. So to start with, we got this Crisco jug of vegetable shortening, and as you can see, this candle right here is just a normal long candle that we've simply shoved down into the middle of this. And what it's going to do is it's going to burn all of the shortening at the top before it starts to burn the candle. That means this is going to last much, much longer than if we were just to use a simple candle like that. It's using the shortening as a fuel source, if you will, to keep that flame going. Now, this is very important. Again, basically what we're going to do here is we're going to coil this in the sand in a circle, and the flame is going to hit this copper, and that heat is going to radiate through that copper coil into the sand, and it's actually going to heat up the sand. It's going to heat this up as well. All right, so the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to cut open our sand bag, and we're going to put about an inch worth of sand into this pail. Now, in case you're wondering, this is just regular play sand. It is completely natural, pre-washed and screened, so nothing is going to come out of this sand that's unhealthy or anything of that nature. So again, we're just going to pour that right down into our pail and get about an inch in there. Now, as you can see, this sand is still a little bit damp. It's totally fine. Once this heats up and we let it run, it's going to dry out that sand, and it's really going to retain that heat. So what we'll do now is just kind of compact this a little bit. Make sure it's nice and level. Kind of makes me want to play in a sandbox. Okay, so we're just going to kind of test fit this and put it in place. That's perfect. We want it about level with this, and this coil is actually going to come up a little bit higher. So next, what we're going to do is unspool this. Now, just FYI, I believe this is 25 millimeter copper. They had multiple different sizes. This is about the thickest you can get, and it's going to retain the most heat. So how we're going to do this is we're going to have the overlap right here go on the bottom. So we're just going to kind of pull this out to what length we think we need. We're going to kind of make it into an oval shape, not so much a circle, just about like that. And we'll tweak this after we get it in, but we're going to bury this into the sand, just like that. And then we're just going to compact it again. Now what we'll have to do is push this over to the side to get our can in, because it's quite large. If you have a smaller can or candle, that will make this a lot easier. Doesn't matter if it's glass, whatever the case, it'll still work just fine. So we're basically going to put it in like so. Let's make sure that our copper is staying intact down there. Push it down a little bit, make sure it's set in there really nice. And the objective is to get this as close to that wick as possible. Okay, so that's exactly what we're after. Now we're just going to simply fill all of this around all the way up to this lip, and that's going to give us that sand that's going to collect and capture all of that heat. Okay, so now that we have this somewhat full, we're just going to pack it in and make sure that this is making full contact with that copper, because there's some voids down in here. So we're just going to kind of press it in with our hands. Make sure that's making really good contact with that copper. This is a really important part of this. You want to trap as much of that heat in there as possible. All right, that's just about it. All right, so now as you can see, we're still a little bit of distance off. We want to make sure that the flame is hitting this for as long as possible. And just in case you're wondering, if this burns down eventually, that heat is still going to be hitting this, but on the early stages of this candle, it's really going to circulate that heat through the copper. Okay, so that's exactly what we're after. We want that flame to be touching this. We can actually see it burning some stuff off. That will quit here in just a moment, and this will just get really red to where we can't even touch that. And then slowly, as we let this burn, we'll see this sand continue to dry out, and we'll come back in a little bit, and we'll even show you with a thermal image camera how warm this actually gets. All right, guys, so already right here, I can't hardly hold my finger on it. It's super hot right here. So slowly that's just going to radiate through that sand. It's going to dry up the sand, and it's going to really get this nice and warm. All right, guys, so it's been just a little bit here. We got some discoloration on the top lid here. As you can see, we got about 360 degrees. That's a really good temperature. I've seen it get a little bit hotter, but as you can see, our sand is starting to dry out here. So it shouldn't take too long for that sand to dry out, but this is something that you can use for just hours on end. Again, in the event of an emergency winter power outage, you can have this set up, light it, put it in a room, and you can keep that room safe. Now, just a word of caution with that, just make sure you have a good smoke detector and a good carbon monoxide detector. You definitely want to have those precautions in place just in case there's any issues, but I've had this running for a while and I have had zero issues as far as smell or anything of that nature. Now, just to show you how hot this is getting, just instantly boils off water. So it's definitely putting a lot of heat into that sand. And once we have this running for a few hours, I'm sure this is going to get really warm on the sides. And I can actually feel the warmth already right here, especially where that copper band is on both sides. All right, guys, so it's been several hours, and as you can see, there's a lot of heat here down at the bottom and mainly at the top, even to where that sand is producing heat on the outside. You can see how much lighter that is than the ground, and this is, the longer you have this on, the more it's going to produce. I don't think it's going to get like crazy hot at any point. This will just kind of get to one temperature and it will maintain that temperature, but it will also do that for a very long time. Now, this has been several hours, and as you can see, it is slightly below now, so you could choose to push this down if you wanted to, but this is still very hot. We could probably still take water and put it on there and it would just burn right off. As you can see, all of the sand is completely dry. Towards the inside, it's probably still drying, but just to the touch, this sand is really warm. If we were actually to shine this, the sand itself is 81 degrees. And again, this will continue to radiate heat and keep a space warm. So instead of just having heat coming out of the top, with a candle, this is actually heating up the whole thing, and the whole thing is acting as a little heater. So if you have this in a room, this is absolutely going to keep it warmer than just having a candle in there. And one thing I noticed, you'll see that black stuff, is it would create some soot right here initially, and then it would just drop off into there. But as you can see, it's not smoking or anything. When I initially lit this and it created a little bit of soot, it did make a little bit, but it wouldn't be enough to, for this to present any sort of hazard. But again, just make sure you have a carbon monoxide detector as well as a smoke detector in the space that you're leaving this. Now, you'll notice we also have these little terracotta supports. This keeps it off the ground. I don't think there's really any threat of this becoming hot, just because there's a barrier of sand right there. But just to be on the safe side, you could keep that underneath it. And just as a good rule of thumb, I probably wouldn't leave this unattended. Obviously, you want to make sure you're around when this thing is burning. Well, guys, there you have it, an emergency heater that will last a really, really long time. Now, if you're interested in seeing some other methods that require no gas and no electricity, I have another video right here that uses some of the same features as this. None of them have sand, but some of them work really well in the event of an emergency, so you can check those out right there. Until next time, you guys be safe. Later.